Like, if you're a leftist and you have China derangement syndrome, what is wrong with you? If you're American and you think Xi Jinping is evil, this is what he is saying. As American politicians are tweeting shit like kill them all, like Randy Fine. You got Lindsey Graham and Ted Cruz explaining how we got to engage in the final solution, cheering on the deaths of Russians, explaining how we got to have imperial dominance over Africa and the global south. It's nothing but violence, death, murder. We got to have more police in the street. We have more police killing Americans. Nothing but unhinged, violent rhetoric that comes from our politicians compared to Xi Jinping that's calling for world peace and cooperation. Isn't this dastardly? Like CNN, like you guys see the CNN headline. Like he defiantly calling for world peace. He called for world peace in a defiant way. China called for world peace, but at what cost? I think it's very important for Americans to hear what these people are saying. Like, even though we don't have time to cover everything, I implore you guys to listen to the speeches of Xi Jinping and Putin and these leaders that Americans trying to convince us that we should hate. And the people who are ignorant, they're the ones who fall for it. They're the one who engage in Putin derangement syndrome. They engage in Xi Jinping anti-China derangement syndrome. You guys know exactly what I'm talking about. Is the pro-war, pro-NATO left, who we've been aggressively calling out. I mean, I have nothing against my brother, Dr. Cornel West, but that's part of our split. Was because he was like, we got to stand for Alexei Navalny. And I was like, nigga, never in a million years will that ever happen. You guys know that's the origin of our split. Like, these are the kind of things that we can't tolerate. And we got to have awareness in our position of being within the empire. And we cannot ever legitimize the empire talking to points against their enemies. So let's play this clip. I'll say this is another clip from G I want to play. I'm gonna see if there's anything else, but let's play this clip and we can react to this. I want to show at least one clip of G speaking before we move on.
历史承载过去，也启迪未来。新时代新征程，全国各族人民要在中国共产党坚强领导下，坚持马克思列宁主义。
Based Xi Jinping. What a giant W. You can't convince me to hate this guy. What a giant W.
坚强领导下，坚持马克思列宁主义、毛泽东思想、邓小平理论、三个代表重要思想、科学发展观，全面贯彻新时代中国特色社会主义思想，坚定不移走中国特色社会主义道路，传承和弘扬伟大抗战精神，出力奋发，勇毅前行，为中国式现代化全面推进强国建设、民族复兴伟业而团结奋斗。
There are actually U.S. leftists that would prefer Bernie Sanders over this guy.
Oh my God!
Can you imagine? Can you imagine preferring Zoran Mamdani over this guy?
This is the clip that I sent anyway. So this is the one that I sent to Zoya in the chat.
I'm glad. Sarah, if there's anything else you want to cover, just let me know.
No, I wanted to cover this. I thought it was really great that he.
This is a great speech.
Marxism, Lenin. It wasn't long either, but it was fantastic. It was.
Yeah,
a great
I'm definitely gonna go back and watch the whole thing. I haven't seen it yet. So I definitely will watch it because you guys know I'm a nerd. I love watching this shit. Like, this is like the difference between G and even just the average. Cause remember we showed a clip of that of the former Chinese foreign minister, and it was maybe a few months ago. It was an amazing clip where he just destroys the West on Ukraine, Israel, a wide range of issues. So the point I'm making is that whenever you look at the Chinese leaders, they have a wide understanding of foreign issues, geopolitical, understanding of what's going on. Do you guys think that Kamala Harris, for example, has a complex understanding of the geopolitical history between China and Taiwan and why U.S. recognition of Taiwan is so crucial to our relationship with China? Do you think that Kamala Harris can explain this in an eloquent way? Of course not. Do you think that Kamala Harris can describe the history between Russia and Ukraine and why Russia views that as a no? They have no intellectual understanding, and their intellectual capacity compared to the leaders in China and Russia is extremely limited. This is why people in the West don't understand why people in China support their leaders, why Putin and the Chinese Communist Party has extremely high approval rating, because they live in a completely different reality than we do. And what a lot of Americans do is they project the failures that their leaders have on other countries as a way to cope. Because in America, Congress has around a 20% approval rating.
Yeah.
We've been stuck with Nancy Pelosi for 40 years, who's minus 25 on a good day. So because our system failed and because our politicians don't represent us, Americans who believe in American exceptionalism, a lot of Trotskyites as well, they project our failures on other countries and assume that they have an evil, malicious ruling class, when that's not always the case. That is pure American way of thinking. But I was just ranting. Eddie, you want to chime in? I think
for sure. I mean, that was one of the best Xi speeches I've heard in a while. You know, in the 90s, China, they were a little bit quieter about championing Marxism-Leninism. They still were. You know, they were still under the guidance of the party, but they weren't coming out here and saying, you know, we are a Marxist-Leninist country as loudly as Xi is saying here, when all the world's eyes are on him because of this summit. And this is so beautiful to see. And that's why he and the Chinese people have so much, you know, more thorough an understanding of geopolitics and their economic system, and why they've lifted so many people out of poverty while Americans are falling into poverty. And you see now, Donald Trump promised to bring the jobs back and promised to end the wars, but he doesn't know how. And the reason he doesn't know how is because he doesn't have a Marxist-Leninist understanding. There's no way the president can use the executive office to save America. There needs to be a revolutionary movement. We need land redistribution, right? We need public jobs. We need the nationalization of major sectors of the economy. We need the complete seizure of the American banking system. These are all things that China has done that the U.S. hasn't. And I can't help but nerd out for a little bit. These people's understanding of Marxism-Leninism is so deep. I know reading all 3 volumes of Capital isn't for everybody, okay, but I have read all 3 volumes of Capital. It was a mountain to climb. Nobody understands it. Nobody understood Marxist theory quite like the Chinese in general, and they have this understanding of the historical process of development. So China under Mao Zedong, it wasn't the same as China under Deng Xiaoping, wasn't the same as China under Xi Jinping. So they constantly need to adapt. And you hear him say Mao Zedong thought there, right? And you might think, well, they're not like crazy American Maoists, right? Who are wild and say that China's not real socialism because Mao's not in power anymore. No, they call it Mao Zedong thought, which makes a distinction between Mao, the general thought of Mao Zedong and these crazy Maoists who are like dogmatic, basically religious Marxists. So they know that Mao made mistakes, but they say we're going to take from Mao the good and carry on the good and leave behind the bad and what we've criticized. And they have this complete anti-dogmatic attitude, right? They uphold their historical leaders. They don't do what Khrushchev did and give in to what's called national historical nihilism and bash the leader who came before him and Stalin and give the Western propagandists a bunch of free ammo. No, they uphold Mao, even though they understand that he made mistakes. And then they think, okay, based on the conditions that we inherited from Mao, how do we go forward? There's none of that in the U.S. There's just this posturing about we're going to fix the country, but the country belongs to the corporations and banks at the end of the day. So it's
we're going to fight the oligarchy.
Right. Well said, Eddie.
It's beautiful to see their understand, and the theory that's coming out of China right now from these Chinese Marxist-Leninists is just on another level. They're living in 2035. I cannot wait to see what their country looks like in another 10 years, and the way that they bring the world together against imperialism, which is what they've been doing in a new and strategic way, which is, again, if you read, sorry, I'm nerding out right now, but if you read the inner Chinese, good. If you read the inner Chinese Communist Party debates, they're constantly looking at the Soviets. They're constantly looking at Yugoslavia, and they're saying, okay, this worked and this didn't. So let's, take that and leave behind the other. And that is why they're the most advanced nation in the world today and the most advanced socialist country in the world today that's leading this emerging multipolar order. So God bless China is all I have to, say.
Exactly. And I think that's so important because we talk about the Great Firewall as well. And people always say, oh, they're restricted. And it's like, no, it's to actually protect them from us. You can see that they're very extroverted when it comes to gathering information and intelligence and theory and stuff like that. But they're shielded from all of the kind of crap. And I do have friends on Twitter that are Chinese, and their understanding of things is just, I don't even know if I could get Americans to that point, but it's always people centric. It's always through a working class lens. It's always people are the party, and the party is the people, and that's it. Then that's who runs the country. The country is ran by the Chinese Communist Party, who is the people.
Which is where the Soviets went wrong. Again,
right.
That, under Khrushchev, the party became disconnected, and they talk about that all the time. They say, our party remains rooted in the people. Xi Jinping launched these massive anti-corruption efforts to kick out all of the corrupt officials who were being bribed by the U.S. They're constantly learning from their mistakes and going forward, and that's what American leaders have less than zero ability to do.
Yeah, see, this is why we're glad that Eddie joined us today. It's great to have Eddie and Sarah on because they're one of the few people who can match my level of nerding out over geopolitical issues. Eddie definitely can match my level when it comes to the level of enthusiasm we have with the progress of the working class, which is why I find anti-China leftists to be very weird. Like, you're not celebrating this progress. You're not celebrating this massive victory in the class war that we got over the capitalist class. Like, this is the person they want us to be afraid of. And I want to get to the speech because the speech ends on a banger. So I didn't forget the video. Trust me, I will get back to the video. But I'm in a way trying to show you guys what he said during the speech for the most part. And listen to this part of the speech. And I was skimming this because I haven't seen the whole speech yet. And how is this the axis of evil? How is this the evil tyrant that has been painted to the American people? Look, history warns us that humanity rises and falls together. Only when all countries and nations treat each other as equals and coexist in peace. Oh, the inhumanity. Oh, look at the evil Xi Jinping calling for world peace. Like, if you're a leftist and you have China derangement syndrome, what is wrong with you? If you're American, you think Xi Jinping is evil. This is what he is saying. As American politicians are tweeting shit like "kill them all," like Randy Fine. You got Lindsey Graham and Ted Cruz explaining how we got to engage in the final solution, cheering on the deaths of Russians, explaining how we got to have imperial dominance over Africa and the global South. It's nothing but violence, death, murder. We got to have more police in the street. We have more police killing Americans. Nothing but unhinged, violent rhetoric that comes from our politicians compared to Xi Jinping that's calling for world peace and cooperation. Isn't this dastardly? Like CNN, like you guys see the CNN headline. Like he defiantly calling for world peace. He called for world peace in a defiant way. China called for world peace, but at what cost? Like this is great. This is great stuff. Only when all countries and nations treat each other as equals, coexist in peace, and support each other can we uphold common security, eradicate the root causes of war, and prevent reoccurrence of historical tragedies. Comrades and friends. That's supposed to say my friends and family. That's what I like to say. Comrades and friends. The Chinese nation is a great nation that is never intimidated by any bullies, always values independence and forges ahead. In the past, when faced with critical struggles between good and evil, light and darkness, progress and reaction, the Chinese people rallied together to define the enemy. They fought for survival of the country, for rejuvenation of the Chinese nation, and for the justice of all humanity. Today, humanity again has to choose between peace and war. You want to know what side the West is on? The West is on the side of war. They're like, we can't have ceasefire in Gaza. That would benefit Hamas. We can't have a ceasefire in Ukraine. That would benefit Putin. But you guys see how this speech is an absolute banger, and I'm actually going to watch the whole thing probably later tonight. But let me go back to this because I was reading a part that this video clip doesn't cover. Let me play this speech to the end, and then we get back to Sarah and Eddie for our final taste. And we begin to wrap up soon. We're about 90 minutes in. Let's watch this last part of the speech, and we begin to wrap this.
坚强领导下，坚持马克思列宁主义、毛泽东思想、邓小平理论、三个代表重要思想、科学发展观，全面贯彻新时代中国特色社会主义思想，坚定不移走中国特色社会主义道路，传承和弘扬伟大抗战精神，踔厉奋发，勇毅前行，为中国式现代化全面推进强国建设、民族复兴伟业而团结奋斗。中华民族伟大复兴势不可挡，人类和平与发展的崇高事业必将胜利。
How dare you call for peace and development for humanity? Aren't you guys afraid? Boomers in the suburbs are afraid after hearing this. But anyway, we can begin to wrap up. Sarah, Eddie, any final
No,
thoughts?
you're fine. My charger's good. We're good. I'm fine.
You gonna go?
Yeah.
Any reactions to the speech, Eddie, Sarah?
I love the speech. I'll watch it 1,000 more times. I've already watched it like 10 times. I watched the whole thing like a ton of times.
Yeah. Even without a deep understanding of Marxism, Leninism, like even on an aesthetic level, it's like, damn, our leaders are so dumb. And how nice would it be to have a leader like Xi Jinping or Putin who can give a speech where they're citing history and they're talking about a plan for the country that's been, in place for 7 decades. We don't have anything like that. And China's gotten better in recent years, and this has been a conscious effort at explaining their system to the world, right? They know that the U.S. war machine is always going to continue to be pro-war because that's how they make their profit, and the profiteers run the country. China understands that, but they're now making it more simple for people, being like, look, we're on the side of peace. They're on the side of war. Which one do you want to side with? And I recommend people read Xi Jinping's book on the governance of China if you want to learn more about it, and you'll be mind blown by at least I was. It was one of the first Marxist books I ever read, and I was like, man, I didn't know as much about theory at the time, but I'm like, it would be so nice to have a leader who is this smart and this rational and this measured and this non-dogmatic. So even just on the surface level, I don't know how people don't see what China's doing and support it over the U.S. and NATO.
This is the true axis of resistance right here. Look at this powerful, beautiful photo. I guess the best we can do as we struggle for revolution in our country, as we fight for the betterment of our working class, is live kind of vicariously through the Chinese people. Like you said, Eddie, I'll be looking forward to see what they are accomplishing. The plans they announced is very ambitious. It's great to see that this.
He introduced a new initiative. He set forth a new initiative for world governance. Like they haven't released all the details, but I think that's the most important thing. He put that forth at the SCO. It was supported verbally by both Lukashenko and Putin and everyone else that I heard speak. But there is an initiative for global governance, and this is about ushering in the multipolar world. Lukashenko and Putin both had a conversation about it that was recorded, and Putin spoke about it in his speech. They're very, very I'm very curious as to what it is, but it looks like SCO is morphing into what we wanted BRICS to be. SCO is becoming a sort of more It's becoming very security bloc. It's very, very focused on security and defense, and that's excellent for the countries that are involved. Look at the things that happened at the SCO this weekend. We had Pakistan say, yeah, I think we'll recognize Armenia. We had China and Armenia enter into an agreement, which that could disrupt the corridor. The SCO is the counter, at least the Eurasian counter to NATO for now, and they're doing fantastic. The agreements that came out, and we haven't even read all of them. But yeah.
I'm so jealous of all these countries and all these flags. Zoya,
so jealous.
Zoya, when are we gonna legally immigrate to China? I'm gonna hide in Jason Smith's basement. Like, we have a lot of people from China on our show. I'm sure we can find somebody that can harbor us. Cause China, like, bro, we got nothing to hide.
It's actually not that difficult to get a visa now to China. It's quite easy.
We just got to bring China here. The U.S. think about this. The U.S. has 13 times their natural resources, and they've been able to abolish poverty with, 13 times less natural resources. If the U.S. was to overthrow our corrupt government and have a working class government, the amount of cooperation we could have with China and the amount of good that we could bring the world, we'd be living in a Star Trek episode. But the U.S. and imperialism is the biggest fetter on humanity right now. It's a fetter on humanity. China's got a plan for development. The U.S. has nothing but a plan for destruction and
literally
pillaging
of the rest of the world. Literally, that's all they know.
Yeah, that's very well said. And that's why I always laugh at the people that, like, if you don't like America, why don't you leave? It's like, there's revolutionary obligation that we have. Like, if it wasn't for the giant fat ass family that I have here that keep me happy, you know what I mean? I would have been gone, but there's a revolutionary obligation that we have to make our own country better. You guys know I was on Red Note a lot, and there was a thread that lives rent free in my mind. It actually got me fired up. I wish I can link it. I wish I can find it. But there was someone in China that was explaining how, for all the Americans who are jealous of China, you have to understand the generations that they fought to get to where they are right now. That there's a revolutionary struggle that their working class engaged in. They had this struggle against capitalism. They had people who fought, and they had people who died. And you can't skip that step. Like, it's very important for us to engage in in revolutionary cohesion as a community together to turn us closer to a China. There's no skipping steps. This is why RBN, this is why Midwestern Marx, this is why we happily accept that challenge. We happily accept our role as people who educate Americans, who want to facilitate this kind of revolution. But I'm sharing this from Jason Smith. You gotta know Jason Smith is like our China guy. He was on a few weeks ago. American reporter who lives out of China. He was explaining all of the countries that got visa-free access to China, because China essentially is just inviting countries and people over to see their progress. They're like, man, we can't compete with this U.S. propaganda-funded network. Many of them that took a big hit with Radio Free Asia closing down, but they had this giant propaganda network. They're like, man, we can't really compete with this. And we don't really want to. Like, if we wanted to create a propaganda network, we probably can, but we're too busy, uplifting our working class out of poverty and building infrastructure projects instead of spending billions of dollars funding Nepo babies to spread propaganda for us like the United States did. So instead of doing that, they're like, hey, man, just come in and see China for yourself. And that's done wonder for China and their popularity.